Very good evening to you all and a warm welcome to the International Women's Day 2021 on the theme Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World, organized by the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, incorporated by an Act of Parliament as the National Professional Management Accounting Institution in Sri Lanka. On that note, I would like to invite Professor Lakshman R. Watawala to deliver the welcome address. Professor Lakshman R. Watawala, founder president of CMA Sri Lanka, past president CA Sri Lanka, past president South Asian Federation of Accountants, a proud receiver of the National Honours Sri Lanka Shikamani, and a fatherly figure in the accounting profession who was instrumental in pioneering the setting up of two professional accounting bodies in Sri Lanka, WAT Sri Lanka and CMA Sri Lanka. Professor Watawala, I'm honored to invite you to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Today we have our chief guest, Ms. Amina Arif, who is the Country Director of IFC. We are indeed pleased to have her with us on this very important day. Then of course we have our keynote speaker, Ms. Guyani Alves. Then of course a number of other speakers. Suranga, you are not alone. I'm also there with you. And of course all the others are there. We have Ms. Dilrukshi, Gurukula Surya, who will be also speaking. And then of course our moderator, Ms. Chamit Kure, and our two panelists, Darshini and Gauri. So let me welcome all of you to this International Women's Day. It's a very, very important and special day for all women, not only women, but also all men and those who are supporting the women folk. So let me also say that we have a very, very interesting and very, very important theme, achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. I don't think that I should try to speak on this because we have very, very eminent persons who are here, like Ms. Amina, Guyani, and Suranga, who will be, and Dilrukshi, who will be giving the trend on this. But I must say that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been able to get together as a result of the technology. And one thing I am sure that all of you will be talking of is working from home. Now, today, a lot of them are, some of you are at home, some of you are working from office, but I'm sure all of you will have very good things to say. And today, women are very, very important part of our society. Of course, you know that the first woman prime minister was from Sri Lanka. I think that was a very big achievement for Sri Lanka. And we have our head of the IFC, Ms. Amina. I'm very grateful to her for accepting our invitation to give the keynote address. And of course, the chief guest address, we have another lady who will be giving the keynote address. So I don't want to add anything more, but we are very grateful to all of you because this is last year, I think we were unable to go ahead with our International Women's Day due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But prior to that, we all met and we were able to have a very good event. And today I'm sure the online function will be really one that everyone will appreciate. So let me hand you over to our compeer in order to introduce our chief guest, Ms. Amina.
Thank you, Professor Watawala. Our chief guest for today's event, Ms. Amina Arif, Country Manager for IFC Sri Lanka and Maldives. She has had a varied career in banking before she joined the IFC in 2012 in Pakistan. As a banker working in international banks such as Citibank and ABN AMRO, also she worked across various industries and markets. This experience held her in a good stead when she joined IFC as a part of their financial institution group covering the Middle East and North Africa region. Her role there encompassed both investment and advisory services. She has worked in challenging, fragile, and post-conflict markets, and since 2016, she has been based in Sri Lanka, where she is the country manager for IFC covering Sri Lanka and Maldives. In her role, she manages both investment and advisory programs for these markets across all industry segments. I consider it a great honor to welcome Ms. Amina Arif to deliver the chief guest address. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Kani and Professor Lakshman. It's indeed an absolute pleasure to be here. So good afternoon, everyone. This is an opportunity not just to be part of this very august event, but also to have the opportunity to talk about a topic close to my heart. So I'd like to begin by thanking CMA Sri Lanka for inviting me today. And of course, a special thanks to Professor Vatawala, who's been a very kind guide for me since I arrived in Sri Lanka, well beyond anything, any particular role that, amongst the many, many roles he's played. So thank you very much, Professor. I'd also like to take a moment to wish the women here a happy International Women's Day. And to the men, because, as it was pointed out to me recently, all the men have mothers, or wives or daughters or sisters, but definitely mothers. So, this is a day to celebrate all women, not just those of us who happen to be women on this call. So while I wish you, I must confess that I think women, and especially working women, should be celebrated daily. One day is just not enough. But what this day, what March 8th gives us, is a chance to reflect on the progress, as well as on the struggle for greater gender equality, what is still needed. It's a reminder and a call to create a more gender balanced, diverse world. While balance is important for both men and women alike, it's particularly relevant to women as they're often expected to strike a balance between career building and being the primary homemaker and caregiver of the family. That is just the reality. And I think that's across the world. It's not just a reality for us in Sri Lanka or South Asia. I think the past year has been a great test and a great testament of the multiple roles women play. With the unprecedented challenges that COVID-19 brought in, many of us women and working women especially working mothers, had to go beyond what was considered the norm and juggle between home and office fronts in an entirely new way. I know I felt like I was doing several full-time jobs all at the same time. Over the past year, the pandemic triggered a massive global economic downturn. The negative impacts of this were disproportionately greater for women than for men. Research shows that women are nearly twice as likely as men to lose their jobs during the crisis, twice as likely. Even though women make up just 39% of the global employment, they accounted for more than half, 54% of overall job losses. The causes and effects are many, and they're deeply intertwined. UN Women points out that women across the world are losing their livelihoods faster, in part because they're more exposed to the hardest hit economic sectors. 527 million women, so 500 million women, work in the 4 hardest hit sectors. This represents 41% of total female employment versus 35% of total male employment. So these sectors have a higher representation of women, and these were the sectors that were the hardest hit. Also, women comprise 70% of the global health workforce, and they're at the front lines of the pandemic response across the world. Paid and unpaid care work and violence against women also went up during this time. All of this affects economic growth. As if we continue with this trend, global GDP could be $1 trillion lower than in 2030, risking the progress achieved over the years in advancing gender equality and stabilizing economic growth. On the other hand, if we take action now, It could add $13 trillion to global GDP in 2030. These numbers are important. These numbers show us why we need to continue our push towards greater gender equality. It's a proven fact that if women's employment equaled men's, economic growth would be higher and far more resilient. More diverse leadership and representation brings in a wealth of skills and experiences, leading to better governance and more inclusive societies. In Sri Lanka, one of IFC's own research papers found that the country's top listed companies with higher gender diversity performed better in financial metrics, whether it's return on assets or return on equity, or they just performed better when they had more diverse, balanced boards. Simply, it means that having more women in leadership or other positions is good for business. If we are to fully realize the benefits of women's economic participation, companies should invest in them as employees, as entrepreneurs, as customers, and as community stakeholders. We need to remember that the path towards a resilient recovery must be gender inclusive. The pandemic has been a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. It gives us a chance to change the business as usual paradigm. Why don't we think of a new paradigm where women could be at the heart of the path to recovery? And as leaders, employers, and simply as a society, the onus is on all of us. Gender parity is not just a social benefit. There is a clear economic rationale for doing this. And that's only by doing this together, by ensuring both genders are participating in this recovery, that we're going to be able to recover faster and more sustainably. At IFC, we believe that there has never been a more opportune time to invest using a gender lens. So even amidst a pandemic where we have been pressing ahead with full force in incorporating a gender focus when responding to the crisis. Just last Thursday, we launched the country's first national financial inclusion strategy that focuses on underserved segments like gender. I apologize for the noise. There is some building work going on, and clearly they are not aware that the noise. Sorry about that. We launched the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, and that's really an important cornerstone for building gender parity across the financial sector. At the height of the pandemic, we were one of the first to support our client, Commercial Bank of Ceylon, to help small businesses recover. In this, over a third of the funds would go to women-owned businesses. Our research on small business and employment delved into how the pandemic affects working women and men, and most importantly, it provided recommendations to move forward. This year's theme for International Women's Day, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. This theme is about celebrating the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping a more equal future and a more resilient recovery from the pandemic. The importance of gender parity cannot be overstated. Harnessing the power of women's leadership is crucial more than ever if we are to achieve a more equal, more inclusive, and a more sustainable future for us all. And with so many remarkable and talented women in Sri Lanka, it would be a shame not to harness their gifts to help the country grow. If we can achieve this, we all gain. So let's choose to challenge. Thank you. I'm with you in this challenge always. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Madam Amina Arif. Speaking of our keynote speaker for the day, Ms. Guyani Alves is a leading supply chain professional. She was the former Director, Customer Service Management Committee member of Unilever Sri Lanka Limited, responsible for supply chain. During her 19-and-a-half-year tenure with Unilever locally and overseas, she has worked in supply chain, research and development, and quality assurance prior to her early retirement to start her own consulting and lecturing career. She was the first female director for supply chain from South Asia in Unilever. She is a non-executive independent director of Singer Sri Lanka PLC and Logicare Private Limited. Ms. Guyani is currently the global chairperson of Women in Logistics and Transport which is the Women's Forum of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and was the global vice chairperson of Women in Logistics and Transport, responsible for South Asia. Being the keynote speaker for today's event, it is indeed an honor to hear from you today, madam. The platform is yours.
Thank you. Let me first try to share the screen. Can you see that? Could you see the screen?
No.
Wait.
It may take a minute.
Yes. Okay, you can see now, right?
Yeah, no, fine.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, CMA, for inviting me for this very topical topic, that is the achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. Thank you, Professor Vatawala, for inviting me for the webinar, which is commemorating the International Women's Day. As we all know, this year's International Women's Day theme is Choose to Challenge. And I have picked up Choose to Challenge the stereotypical thinking and biases. Because as we all know, women are in leadership positions in various fields and at various levels, locally in Sri Lanka as well as globally. But the level of percentage that we really want to see is not, the critical mass is not there. So it is important, especially during a global pandemic situation like COVID, when not only us, the whole world, the entire lives and livelihoods got impacted, and economies have got impacted and disrupted, and we are trying to revive the economies now. The importance of having all in the population and capability of everyone's awareness is important for us to come out of this pandemic situation. So it is quite important for us to understand, although women are not at high levels percentage wise in at different levels in different organizations, for us to understand the level that women has to achieve, especially in a affected situation like now. I mean, Amina spoke a lot about the statistics, but I just also remind you a little bit about statistics. As per the Global Gender Gap Report 2020, it reveals that for gender parity to achieve, it will take 95 years. This seems to be a very daunting task, right? Although it is 95, there is a slight improvement versus the previous time, but certainly this will not happen during our lifetime, at least my lifetime, right? And South Asia per se is one of the regions which is better than the number of years gap that we are going to achieve it as per the global figures. So this shows how difficult a person to achieve, especially a woman to achieve the level that we want to achieve parity. If you look at the gender gap close to date by region, sorry, this slide is not very clear. If you look at Western Europe, it will take 54.5 years, North America, much longer, right? Latin America and the Caribbean, years to achieve the parity. And if you look at South Asia that we belong to, and we also have a similar situation. So what should we do to achieve this objective that we all want? Because by leaving half of the population behind and them not being economically active, you will not achieve progress in a country. And what are these parameters that we are looking at in the Global Gender Gap Report? And before that, let me take you through about the South Asia figures also, right? So this is where we are. And if you look at the figures, Bangladesh and Nepal are Nepal is slightly ahead of us. Bangladesh has really progressed in the ranking at 50 global level, right? So if you look at the total, 29% of the GDP of Sri Lanka is contributed directly by women, as against 11% in Pakistan, 18% in India, and 19% is Bangladesh, right? So Sri Lanka is generally ahead because we all know apparel sector, tea, rubber, and then the Middle Eastern remittances, they're all our entire economy mostly powered by women. And they're unfortunately, they're at the lower end of the population strata and at different level in the job hierarchy in our country. So what is important for us is to get more women into the higher level in the job structure, job hierarchy. Female labor force participation in Sri Lanka is declining. We were at 36%, and now it is slowly declining as per the last year's statistics report. And our latest figure is 34.5. So it is a bit disheartening to see, despite all the efforts by all professional bodies like Professor Vatavalas and many other organizations, and all of us, IFC, VELAT, various organizations, that we all do that. Awareness is getting created, all that is there, but how do we really increase this participation of women? Do we have the right conducive environment to achieve that objective? And what are the elements that will really help us to achieve these numbers in a positive level, moving in the right direction? As I mentioned to you, our economic participation in Sri Lanka is low. Economic participation and opportunity is one area that is looked at in the Global Gender Gap Report. And education attainment, we have free education in our country. And despite that, our ranking is not that high there. And health and survival, we are actually happy to say we are sharing the #1 ranking position versus the other countries, again, because of our free public health, very good infrastructure system that we have. So it is important for us to understand where we are excelling and where we have the problem. The other important area is the political empowerment, especially the decision-making ability of women, especially if we don't have more women in the political arena who can really talk on behalf of our issues, at the government. And it's very sad to say, still, we as women, we don't elect more women politicians to the government. So that is another problem. So in decision-making level, then the priority given for gender-based policies and approaches is quite limited, and that is impacting the way we progress, right? Unfortunately, most of the decision-making is and the physical infrastructure-based development growth that we always focus, especially males mostly, the focus is on physical infrastructure development versus social infrastructure facility, which is more looking at social status and the equity level, equity and all that for women specifically are good at. So why are we not there yet? Mainly, we all know, even personally us, we have conscious and unconscious biases. Although we point a finger at men, we ourselves have these biases with us. So we need to challenge these, we must choose to challenge these biases. We sometimes underestimate, the performance bias is one such bias where we underestimate women's performance and overestimate that of male counterparts just because they are men, right? So we ourselves underestimate. As women, we don't like to, go forward and, accept opportunities that come our way. We always sometimes, although there are so many young girls coming out of universities, we see most of them are not joining the world of work and they are outperforming the men. Attribution bias. Men ought to get more credit for a given success while women will receive more blame or failure. Again, these are biases. When something goes wrong, it is attributed to a female. Maternal bias plays on the false assumption that women are less committed to their careers than men, especially when they have children. Again, research has found out that when women have more children, the chances of them remaining at home to look after them is much higher, whereas With men, it is just the opposite, and they get to get involved in their jobs. So these are things that we actually have in our society. And confirmation bias, unconsciously we select people like ourselves because we believe our own attributes. Therefore, when you already have less women in the industry, then you don't recruit women because they are a different, belong to a different gender. So, or your old boys club, and you have your schools and your ethnic group and all that. So we have these biases. So these biases prevents us from accepting roles that are at higher levels, and especially once you come to a certain level, beyond that you don't want to go move over there because of other reasons, because we have to prioritize our family life. So you need to understand these biases and conscious of that fact if we really want to get more women into the leadership positions. As Amina also mentioned, COVID-19 crisis has driven as many as 2 million women, particularly mothers with young children, to consider leaving the workforce, especially because of the COVID situation, because there were situations where the children were not having school, they had to work from home. Managing all that was a challenge. And you could clearly see this trend with parents overall and parents with kids under 10 years. And this is a big problem. And the COVID has really impacted the lives of women, mainly because of loss of jobs and other additional workload that they have to undertake. A study was done and that they asked what makes a good leader by group of business leaders during the COVID period. And in that very, very interesting, the findings that was got was that some of the attributes that were identified mostly were females were getting higher scores in terms of communication, especially during the COVID situation, the ability to delegate, where they were not so good there, not a good score, and positive attitude, again, maybe because of the challenges that they had to go through, and the ability to inspire and confidence. So out of the 5 attributes they tested, 3 attributes women has scored more than the men. So these are some of the things. So let's understand what we saw in the global arena. We all saw countries with female leaders took swift action for the lockdown. And we also saw, and statistics show in the early part of last year, countries with female leaders have suffered 1/6 as many COVID-19 deaths as those led by men, and will recover sooner from recession as well. So I'll show you a few examples, and especially Hong Kong sharing the border with China, where the pandemic really was happening at that time. They were able to contain the virus with quick action, swift action, with border controls, lockdown and tracking and tracing, and ensuring strict controls. Although they didn't fully close the airports and the ports, they managed the controlling of the spreading of the virus, and all key positions that were managed were women. Hong Kong chief executive, she had to go through a lot of other challenges because of the strikes and all that there. And Secretary for Food and Health, head of communicable diseases, all were headed by, key positions were headed by women. And we all saw so many stories and about Jacinda, the New Zealand Prime Minister, that Taiwanese Prime Minister, Angela Merkel, and Iceland Prime Minister. So we saw a lot of these countries, some are mostly in Scandinavian countries also, how they really acted swiftly, and they put the health of people and the well-being ahead of the economy, and they took swift action, and that helped them to come back on track faster. And a study that was done by Zenger Folkman in 2020, the competencies they've tested, versus men, women outscored men on most of the leadership competencies. Very, very comprehensive finding, right? Taking initiative, agility, inspiring and motivation, developing others. I mean, the list is endless, innovation, because when you are pushed to the wall, the creativity comes out of you. All that was clearly visible, and that actually showed how they have managed the situation. Again, employee engagement, we all saw even in Sri Lanka, women, how they managed their own teams in their companies and how they use creativity to engage them even while they were working remotely, and they were happy. And I have heard some stories, in some situations, men had specifically asked, employees to come to office despite some lockdown situation in their area, because they were so keen to get the work done. Whereas women, how they managed the situation was very different, without any disruption, managing it with a empathetic way. So there are many statistics and examples to show how women has gone that extra mile, using the innate capabilities of women and the traits to look at how they are pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. There is a huge change in the way in both genders, but the change that women have achieved is much higher in the overall effectiveness of leadership by women. And this has resulted in achieving the realization of the basic human needs, social progress index. Also, you see an improvement in that inequality, right? And the GDP, forecasted GDP decline is much lesser where female leaders are leading those countries. So those are some real results that you could see, which proves that there is a definite improvement when women were managing in those organizations. So I quite like this tweet that Jacinda Ardern said. One of the criticisms she always faced was that she's not aggressive and assertive enough, which are considered male traits. She says, I don't see any reason why a woman who's more empathetic can always be compassionate and also strong. You don't need to be an iron woman always. Yes, there are situations you need to do that. And different tactics will require, especially in a black swan situation where we were in a pandemic where it is highly unpredictable and the impact was so phenomenal. And how you manage the situation, you have to be quick to respond to the situation. Women are known to be problem solvers. Women are known to be risk takers. I think those specific traits has helped women to achieve these things that they have already achieved so far. So leadership is not about being in charge. It's about looking after those in our charge. I think that is something that women are good at, right? So you need to be working with your teams. You need to engage with the team. You need to communicate with the team. You need to really love and care and have a concern for their well-being, and while holding them accountable for the delivery of results. So we have seen in the global arena as well as in Sri Lanka. I'll give you one example before I close. There was many examples that we have, but one example where this social entrepreneur, this lady, she's from Panadura. During the pandemic, all of us were impacted, and the groceries and items were not coming to our doorstep. She, together with few of her neighbors, got together and started an online business to deliver things to the doorstep. And she called it dorakadadu.com. And now she has extended that program. And now she has a franchising operation, and she's going to start operating and expanding it. So she's taking the items from the area, which is specific to Panadura, now reaching out to other parts of the country. So this is some simple example of a lady who saw a problem. And there are many such examples. And we also saw Professor Neelika Malavige, the famous virologist. And she was the first to start testing COVID testing PCR facility in Jawadanapura University. And she didn't have the structure set up there, but then she put together a team to do that. And then she has now gone into identifying the virus and the specific details, and identify how this can be looked at in a more scientific manner to see how the Sri Lankan virus is specific to our country or not. So there are a lot of examples, although we may not see like in the global arena in a very focused way. But what is important for us to understand is there are a lot of women out there who may not come out in the open talking about what they have achieved. So as Amin also mentioned, it's definitely a benefit for all of us. By closing the gender gap, global GDP will increase by an average of 35%, with a full 20% of those gains coming from increased productivity due to gender diversity. When women work, research also have found out they invest 90% of their income back into the businesses and into the health and education of the families. Sorry, men, I'm not saying but this is the way that women, that's the nurturing and motherly instinct of women, made them, invest back in the family. And therefore, the family unit will benefit, the society will benefit, the country will benefit, having more women. And as women reach the full economic potential, I would like to reiterate once again, an estimated of $13 trillion will be added to the global GDP by 2030. So isn't the business case clear? I think I'm preaching to the converted. I know all of you who are tuned in today are male supporters. I would call all of you he for she's, the strong advocates, male advocates. So thank you, Professor Vatawala, for you using this topic of the International Women's Day to choosing to challenge the conventional thinking and trying to go on this journey together, because I worked with Professor Vatawala in the SME task force, how he supported the women entrepreneurs is phenomenal and very good. So we must work with male supporters. We can't go on this journey alone. And women bring a different skill set to the table. It's complementary. We have to go on this journey together. Your gender should not define what you want to do in life, or it should not limit your own aspirations. So all of us must get together and make our country and our society a better place. So finally, we want a society where without any issues, we need to have a system in place which will take care of that. It will not take then 95 years. Hopefully, this picture doesn't look a gender diverse picture, but I thought it was quite nice. Everybody, all, supported differently as per the needs. We are still neither here nor here, but ultimate objective is for us to be here so that no one needs any support. The system itself will take care of it because we have overcome the challenges. So thank you very much for inviting me. Look forward to the deliberations later on. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Guyani de Alves. In the meantime, we also remind all the attendees to send in your questions via the Zoom webinar chat for our panelists and speakers to answer them during the panel discussion session. Next in agenda is a speech by Ms. Dilrukshi Kurukula Surya, Chief Human Resources Officer, Diesel and Motor Engineering PLC. She is an attorney at law with diploma in Human Resources Development and a postgraduate diploma in Intellectual Property Law. She counts over 18 years of managerial experiences working for family-owned companies to Fortune 500 companies and large conglomerates. She is very passionate towards capacity building for organizations and empowering women. She is certified for gender studies by Gender Academy ILO International Training Center, Turin. Currently, she is holding the position of CHRO at DEMO, one of the leading corporates in Sri Lanka. She was also a board director at the Skills Development Fund Limited in Sri Lanka from 2017 to 2018 May. She is a recipient of the Top 50 Women Award for Human Resources in year 2017 by Women in Management and one of the 100 top global HR minds recognized by World HRD Congress. Over to you, Madam.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me for this with these eminent speakers, and I'm honored. Thank you very much, Professor Watawala. I think you are one of the main allies in this country for women empowerment. Amina and also Guyani just mentioned the theme of the International Women's Day this year is choose to challenge. So therefore, I have chose to speak about women in unconventional roles achieving an equal future. It is good to notice that the world feels the absence of women and also appreciate our presence when we are there. But however, when we look at the statistics in Sri Lanka, I think Amina and also Guyani mentioned out of 52% of the labor force, out of the 52% of women population in the country, only 34% I was told now female representation, including informal sector, is involved. And also out of 56% of the vote base of women representation, there is only 5% in the Sri Lankan legislation. And even if you look at the boardrooms, out of 1,500 directors in public quoted organization, there are only 136 women board directors. That is about 8% of the population. And when you take engineering, that is an unconventional area for women to be perceived as an unconventional area for women to work in. And that is about 9%, specifically looking at automobile engineering. So what are the issues? I think we have already discussed many barriers that the barriers to close the gender gap, and to see, like, why women cannot pursue their dreams. So core of the gender empowerment, women empowerment, is freedom to exercise the right of choice for women, and right to choose what they want to do with their life, right to choose the occupation, right to choose whom to marry. But all these there are a lot of constraints because of socio-economic pressure on women. So one main thing is the gendered roles or stereotyping in employment. We all know, like, if one occupation doesn't at least doesn't represent 25% of a certain people or certain group of people, so that is they are not much represented in those roles. And also one of the barriers that women have is, like, the perceived gendered roles in the family work-life balance. So apart from being employed, they have many chores to complete at home. And the other main thing is, if the spouse or the husband is well employed, then the income that is brought in by the woman is considered more as a supplementary income. And also, if the man is, or the husband is more stable in the job, then there is a presumption that the woman does not have to work. So, and even if we want to work, even if the woman works to work, a huge barrier is lack of affordable care and the transport. And also, unlike for men, there's very little guidance and mentorship that can be offered to women. Even women, women mentorship is not that common in organizations or in the business arena. So and also we need a lot of contacts and networking for women to be successful, and that is another barrier. More than anything, I think skill knowledge deficiency is one of the main barriers for women to succeed in unconventional roles. So I don't need to mention it again, but because Guyani well defined and addressed this and also explained why we need more women in the business. That is not because it is a nice thing to have, but that is the right thing. Because when there's a talent pool, huge talent pool out of there, how can we forget 50% of that talent pool? So by opening and having open mindset and empowering women, we will have a wide talent pool to choose from. And also that with the diverse skill set that women bring into the board, to the table, that can drive operational excellence and also brings unique insight and fresh perspective. We have seen this during COVID. Many women leaders have been taking very agile decisions. As much as it empowered women to become the leader they could be, and with empathy and take quick decisions, we also know that a lot of women lost their jobs. And when there's diverse perspectives in the table, it enables strong decision making and strengthen corporate citizenship, because women are naturally cost conscious, look at different perspectives, risks, and so on. And speakers before me, both the speakers before me mentioned that by closing the gender gap by 25%, we can increase global GDP by USD 5.3 trillion. So isn't it enough as a business case to have more women in business? But also there's, as women, we are shy. We do not like to talk about our wins, our dreams, achievements. I don't think it has to be like that. And also we are shy to do what we want to be. So how can we overcome this? How can we close this gender gap? I think education is a must. I think when we say education, I know now the parents try to give good education for women, but that is not enough. I think when where education is concerned, I think we have to give the same exposure that we give the sons to all our daughters. And education is one kind of power that a woman could have. And networking is very important. That is why I said that exposure is paramount for women, because that is one barrier that women could have when they want to go global. And we always fail. And what is important is what we do after failing. So it is very important that we bounce back without taking a lot of time, and be open for criticism and be the boss of your own career. I think Guyani mentioned this in detail. We cannot succeed alone. I'm sure that all the participants logged in here are allies and for gender empowerment. So we need to challenge the biases, the social biases, socio-economic biases, and pay attention to performance, not style. And also the speaker before me explained this in detail. And know to value the voice and be assertive where it is necessary. And challenge gender labeling and eliminate stereotypes and take on your dreams with perseverance. And with all this, I do not want to explain in detail. The future that we will foresee is there will be no female leaders or male leaders, but there will be just leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Dilrukshi. Next in agenda is a speech by Mr. Suranga Herath, the CEO of English Tea Shop, one of the world's leading organic tea businesses. English Tea Shop won the National Business Award for Sustainability in 2017 at the National Business Awards, the UK's most esteemed nationwide business awards. And he was recently selected by the LDC as one of 2018's top most ambitious business leaders, where he made it to the top 10 in the category of people-powered organizations. We are privileged to hear from a personal as you, sir. The moment is now.
Thank you, Kani. I'm hoping I'm audible and also my screen is visible. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Wattavala and the CMA for giving me this very, opportune moment. I don't know whether you also feel the same when my colleagues, especially my male, colleagues, knew that I was participating in this webinar. They said I'm going to be a thorn amongst the roses. I was trying my level best to argue that I'm trying to be a butterfly or a bee in an organic garden, and I hope I'll, end up doing that. So yeah, I'll jump on to the. Let me see whether this is moving. Sorry, doesn't seem to be. Yeah. Okay. So I'll quickly touch upon some of the areas that have been spoken about by the previous speakers. I think Amina, Guyani, and Dilrukshi made my life very, very easy, because a lot of the things that they said, I think helps me build on to a message that I want to leave with you. So basically, a quick look at the global context of gender parity. I think we look thoroughly at the Sri Lankan situation. I want to look at the global context. And to show you that it's not very different across the world, the gloomy picture of gender parity. And also I want to touch upon a subject that you all thoroughly explored, whether there is a difference in wisdom and capabilities between male and females. And also something that was very thoroughly covered by Guyani and Dilrukshi both, how do you empower and enable females, and whose responsibility is that? And end with a note which I think is to my perspective tallies much with what Dilrukshi said at the very end about us having leaders and not just female leaders. So this presentation may look a little not little, I think tardy. It's all text, but I don't expect you to be able to read all of these. I'll make sure that I mention the more important things. This talk is largely inspired by a book I just read a couple of days back. So I changed my plans and centered my talk around a book written by the former Prime Minister of Australia, co-authored by her, Julia Gillard, and Gosi, her co-author. The most striking part of this book to me was this is based on experiences of global leaders, women leaders who went to the top in their respective fields, mostly political. And I select political for a reason, because I guess I think a few of you touched on the fact that there needs to be political representation, higher levels of female political representation if the world is to be fixed, right? So it amazes me to see, people like Jacinda Ardern saying that, people are expecting us to do what superhumans are doing. They are setting a false expectation, by agreeing with that. And then, it takes away our right to support and a right to, lean on a system. And it's very, very unfair. And if you, go into Michelle Bachelet's case, and, people asking them very unfair questions like, how do you cope without a husband? Very, very naive. And then it takes to another league when, the former Malawi president, Joyce Banda, when the opposition goes, haywire and says, we generally, have a bull to pull a cart, and, we keep the cow at home. And now, we have a cow to pull the cart or the country. And, it's that bad. And then from Hillary Clinton, her talking about how tough her road to the presidential, candidacy, and then, run up to the election itself, how tough it was. And also Christine Lagarde talking about, it was all raining men, and then how much she was under pressure, and also how gendered the whole stereotyping is, without, I think, the male participants even realizing it. And then Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, when that I think clears a lot of the doubts we have in our mind, when she's clearly understood that, she was their commander, but she was never part of the team. So this, I think, Julia Gillard's summation of interviewing about 12 top, global leaders who's made it to the top in their respective countries and fields, and, how vulnerable and how difficult the job was for them, says it all. So in that book, she goes on to, explain that taboo question, how many women, and, it generally, ends up with an answer which is close to 0 or, very miniature. Academy Award for Best Director, 1 out of 93. How many women have led United Nations, World Bank? 0. How many presidents in United States, France, Nigeria? 0. How many prime ministers of Italy, Spain, Sweden, Malaysia, Singapore? 0. And then to note that only 30% of nations have ever been led by a woman. 70% have never had a woman leader. And also only 13 countries have had more than 1 woman. Only New Zealand and Iceland have had, more than 3 or 3. No country has ever had more than 4. And also, if you take out some of these women leaders who came to that position due to connections, due to their fathers, due to their husbands, due to their moms, or, whoever, the family status or elite status, and got this opportunity, I guess it's even more bleak. So it's ironic that we live in a world that has 4 billion girls, and then the odds are very severely stacked against them in leadership roles. Come to business, it's even worse. From US to Hong Kong, you look at the top, listed companies, the biggest corporates. Amina did mention that the best, the more diverse boards are, reaping economic benefits, but then it doesn't showcase still globally in how, women have come to leadership positions. 6.6% of female leadership in the US top 500. In London, it's 6%, 6 out of 100. In Hong Kong, it's even worse. It's just 1 out of 50. And then the pay gap is also massive, just 63% of what males earn in comparable jobs. And then I think one of you mentioned the fact that I think Amina mentioned that you launched a program through Commercial Bank to fund women-founded businesses. I think it's very, very meaningful, because we've seen, or according to Julia Gillard, it's only 2.7% of the funding that is going out to businesses that goes to female-founded businesses, and 11.8% when it's mixed gender teams, which is the stark reality. And I think Guyani already mentioned that it will take us 95 odd years if we go at this rate to achieve something close to gender parity. And I guess I'm totally with all of my predecessors in when they mentioned about the stereotypes. It's not only the descriptive stereotypes. What bothers us most is the prescriptive stereotypes, where we start telling women what they should be doing. It goes beyond what we believe, what we think as to what they're doing now. I think we're now going further and telling them what they should be doing. And this important topic about wisdom and capabilities, I'm totally with you, Guyani, on the whole evaluation and how women stand out in many, many dimensions, right? Whether it's inherent biological, are women more sharing, caring, multitasking? Are men more commanding, controlling, and competitive? I guess that's not even important. It doesn't even get to that level. You don't even have to go that far, because research shows that differences within a gender is by far greater than between genders. And that's a clear reality, even from our own business perspective, where, I can share examples of so many, females who changed their careers, broad-based their careers, and doing things that we would normally have thought, prescriptive stereotyping that they would never be able to perform. We have our own Jacinda Ardern running our COVID team, and, or Angela Merkel or, Hillary Clinton running our strategy. So I think we've clearly shown that gender is not really the issue here. And you listed a lot of things, so I'm not going to go into detail, Guyani, about what we perceive as females are better, at things than males. But I guess it's a moral question. When I think we have such a diverse population, we want to see a clear reflection of that population in who's leading us, and it's clearly not the case. What's the point of democracy when you're given the chance to vote, but then you can't really become a prospect to become the person whom you voted for? And that's clearly the case, not only in Sri Lanka, around the world, not only in politics, everywhere. So few simple aspects that I think you all covered far greater, so I'll probably just touch upon some of the key ones. I think from the childhood, we've seen, even in the developed world, at times, but more so in the developing world, where girls are always, I think, stereotyped to believe that they're not, as great as boys for certain things, and that needs to change. I think we need to be encouraging, students from very, very young age to say that they need to aim high and they are able to achieve anything. Sri Lanka has a big problem in co-education. I think we have too much divisions there in education, gender-based, caste and creed-based. I think education has to become co-ed, and that can, because Sri Lanka sits in a nice position, because this aspect of gender parity is, we've seen across the world. So if you're looking for a leapfrog, we can't beat everyone in every dimension. Maybe this is that one dimension where we managed to get or appoint the first world prime minister. Obviously, that also due to a certain context. I don't think that opportunity is open to any woman in this country. But at least now, if we gear up, we probably can or will be in a position to open the doors and maybe achieve a leapfrog in gender parity, regardless of anything else. And also not only gender, as Dilrukshi mentioned, maybe a whole heap of other things as well to be considered. And I think it's our collective duty to make sure that our organizations deliver work-life balance and the whole heap of family responsibility that women currently are burdened with. It's not the responsibility of females to argue the case. It's the current leaders who have to really deliver that. And I think this was also mentioned by the previous speakers. I think females need to really work on their networks and make sure that they have solid networks. And it boils down to the next point I want to make. Women should be supporting women, and you have to do it shamelessly. I'm telling you, because you sit in a very, very bad position right now. 6% of corporate leadership, and globally, your single-digit ratings have to go up. So regardless of how you do it, I think your first thing is to support women, and we are totally with you, regardless of how you get about it. And I think you need the men in the discussions. That's one thing. These women's forums and all that will only become richer and more meaningful if you have more men, because I believe the world is full of great people, men and women, who understand this problem and who want to work on this together. So I guess we shouldn't work on silo. We should work together, and we should open the door to everyone to join and take this fight, not as females versus male or underprivileged versus privileged, but as a collective together to do the right thing and to create the right structures and the right opportunities. And I think you have to take leadership. You can't turn away, especially from a political front. I think my personal feel is that females should really get out and contest and get into the political frame, because that is why I selected Julia Gillard's book, because she touches on politics and she selected political leaders who's gone through hell to get to where they are. And then after they left, there is no one to follow up. And I think there is a huge vacuum. And Sri Lanka is an example for that. So I guess we need to really get our constitution changed, or use every opportunity in our constitution to put female, participants into the list, and also get females to shamelessly vote for females. That's what I firmly believe. My last point is, I think it really starts from where Dilrukshi ended. It's not a problem for the females. I think in our business, we've already seen that. I think it's a problem for the vast majority of this world. People are not given a fair chance to perform. And they're judged, these whole, stereotypes, sometimes the more powerful are judged differently. It's not, I don't believe it's males being judged differently versus females in all the cases. There is definitely a clear case for that. But I guess if you look at the larger picture, it is the more privileged. It is the people who are right now the leaders. It is people who are right now at the top who are judged differently. And then everyone else is judged very differently. So why cannot we fight together, create a culture of an open environment? And then that needs us to have a very open dialogue, men and women together. And then we have to upgrade the way we work with each other and fight for our rights, and change this fight from female empowerment to real, authentic, real capability and wisdom-based leadership. And I don't think females being great in HR, in legal, in finance is all complete crap. Sorry for using that word. I guess anyone is capable of doing any job as good as another person. And this difference, I guess, between male and female, it comes from the opportunities given, in the evaluations given, because sometimes it's very, very unfair how we judge certain classes of people. And it's popular amongst, females, but I guess it's also common amongst a lot of other underprivileged, men as well. So it depends where you are, in the social, class, or, where your context is. I want to end with one example. I've listed 3 here, but I want to recommend this book, Peacemaker's Code, written by my negotiations guru, Deepak Malhotra. I don't get any money for, recommending this book, which also came out just last week or week before. It shows, it's probably in my, reading history, the only book where I've seen the coming together or culmination of fiction, nonfiction, history, sci-fi, and all sorts of things into one, we read fiction, we read nonfiction, but this is a culmination of everything. So he's written a book, Teach You Negotiations, using the world's real history, from early civilization to Middle Ages, to Cold Wars, to World Wars, to all sorts of peace efforts, to gender issues, to all sorts of things, and to create a fictional challenge where the planet is, being challenged by another planet, right? And then how a woman American president works with a very, very diverse team. And it's I don't think his intention was to teach us about gender balance. It was just a passing thing where she faces the challenges that Jacinda and Hillary and all of the others have faced. But I think it's less focused on. But my reading from this book is the real power of a family, the real power of male and female working together, the real power of the black and the white working together, and all these different classes working together. And if we are to reach that full potential and create more value, I think that's where we need to go. And I recommend that. And in very short, I think COVID-19 was our biggest eye opener to show, the strength of family. And I've realized, what my wife can do better than me in leaps and bounds. And I, have fullest respect for my wife and kids for showing me, the way in many ways where I went completely blank. And I think they're more sophisticated, clever, and have been a little more commanding as well than pre-COVID. And I really realized the power of us working together. And our own approach, I don't know whether we have, I think just the 15-minute mark. So English Tea Shop's model, where we have an open model to enable everyone to perform and grow in the ladder, because we don't go by the fact that we don't say that females have given us this opportunity. I guess it's far greater than that. We've created a platform where anyone from any background, whether it's female or male, or whether it's any class or creed, people can come in, perform, and are able to reach up to the top. So that's, I think, what we want to see in our world. With that, I'll end and look forward to a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We now step for a panel discussion moderated by Ms. Shamila Kure. She at present is working in the capacity of General Manager Operations at WNS Global Services Private Limited. We at CMA Sri Lanka are proud to introduce Ms. Shamila as a fellow member of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, a fellow member of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, a fellow member of Chartered Management Accountants of UK, a full member of Certified Practicing Accountants Australia, and as a fellow member of Certified Professional Managers Sri Lanka. She is so close to us as she was appointed to lead us the Women Leadership Initiatives of CMA Sri Lanka. We also have with us as panelists, Ms. Dashini Vatawala, a consultant, and Ms. Gauri Shankar, a consultant. We invite all the guest speakers also to join as panelists and for this session. All attendees can send in their questions ongoing with the session using the chat box. Over to moderator.
Thank you, Kani. Suranga, certainly you're a butterfly, not a thorn. So thank you, Guyani, Dirushi, and Suranga for most, wonderful presentation that I've heard on the International Women's Day. And I think that sets the tone for the discussion that we wanted to go into. And I'm pretty sure all of you would agree with me that, much is spoken about the diversity and inclusion, and the gender equality or gender diversity has been one of the top in the agenda. Women's participation in decision-making is much spoken about, and we've seen there is a quantum increase over the past couple of years. But is it enough for us to say that, we have the required representation of women in the leadership roles? Also, as the topic suggests today, we've seen a lot of women's taking up, showing their competencies and coming out very strongly during the pandemic. And today's discussion is all about how can we bring many more women as such. So before I move on to starting the conversation, I would like to hear from Darshi and Gauri of their views of our today's topic, Women Leadership Achieving an Equal Future in COVID-19 World. Let me start with Gauri. Gauri, over to you to share your views on the topic.
Hello, everybody. I will straight go on to the topic of female leaders. Some of the questions that roses why we do not have enough representations as female leaders, maybe in the corporate world or as entrepreneurs. Well, I think female, as one of our speakers did say, female do have a tendency of holding back. So you have to go into it. You have to say, I can do it. You have to face even aggression. You can face that. How do you face that? You have to have, you should be able to vocalize what you want. You should be able to vocalize your dreams, your ambition, what you want to achieve, how you want to be treated. So that is very important. So organizations also has a responsibility to create that kind of an environment within their corporate structure, where women can actually voice their opinions, voice what they are going through. There might be abuse, there might be initiatives in between lines, which can be very discomforting for women. So if there is a platform where they can address it, well, that will actually bring some alertness to the pain that they go through. But there again, there's a lot of problems when women start voicing their opinions. Some people say, oh, she's talking too much, or she's expressing it far too aggressively. Well, there is also a few points women have to take in where you have to use diplomacy. You have to be very correct in when you mention an issue, any aggression, any abuse, where you are not being noticed, you are not being heard. You have to do it very tactfully, with a lot of sensitivity, without labeling, naming people. Because what we have to understand is to be unemotional about issues. But we are addressing the issue. When you address the issue, when you don't label it, the issue gets the main focus. So sometimes we make it very personal. The pain is made too personal, and then it becomes about the person and not about the pain. Because the pain can be very global. It's not about you facing the pain or X or Y facing the pain. That pain can be very global. Many women may be facing that pain. So if we address the pain, people in the group who are listening to it will know and understand the pain. So it's very important. Like Suranga did mention that it's not only women have to listen to women, it's also very important that the men in the corporate structure, men in the political structure, men at home, listen to what women say. So when they listen, they can understand the pain and empathize with it. So there again, I mean, how much we shout, scream, speak, conventions, conferences, are we being heard? So how do we get ourselves heard? Is it, I'm glad that we have all these kind of conferences, deliberations, but are we only hearing, or are we going back to our boardrooms and bedrooms? When I say bedrooms, back to our families, to implement what we have heard. And this is a cultural thing. See, we have a cultural conservatism where women has to be in one corner, man has to be in one corner. Take the Sri Lanka. I was watching a teledrama, and in the teledrama, the mother is saying, "Puta gihilla sellan karanda," telling the boy go and play, and telling the daughter, "Duwa avilla mata udaw karanda kussiya, come and help me in the kitchen." And I was shocked. I mean, why that? I mean, who is watching it? The man in the village, the family in the village. So the girl who is watching, the little girl is watching this teledrama, is thinking to herself, it's okay me going to the kitchen and my brother going and having a good time, right? So it's a mindset. So if you see some of the Indian advertisements, you see the women are being very assertive. The man is preparing a cup of coffee for a coffee advertisement. You're finding the man preparing the cup of coffee, which would not have been about 4 or 5 years ago. So the media is very important. We have to use the media very intelligently to convey these messages of gender equality. And in Pakistan, we have very, poetry is a big thing in Pakistan. We have super poetess who, bring the social issues. If you read what they write through poetry, because personally, I think 90% of the public read poetry in Pakistan, and they are very forceful. They are well heard. See, we have to see where the majority is listening and, target that. Ourselves talking and deliberating in conference is good for us. We are very happy what we heard from all our speakers, but taking it back to the road, back to boardroom, back to our houses, how many of the men and women are going to do that? So we have to use very creative ways by movies, strong female representation in movies, bringing out issues. Pakistan is one of the most fantastic movies comes from Pakistan, where they bring social issues, what women face at home, at work, at school, at universities. They're bringing very good issues through their teledramas and their movies. So we have to actually encourage. I think Mr. Watabala can do that, probably talk to our media to bring out good programs where they address these issues. Second very important thing is our education system, because cognitive and non-cognitive skills can be embedded in our education system. So in our education system, in 2016 or 17, there was an education conference in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And soon after that, Mexico and Singapore, they started implementing cognitive skills and non-cognitive skills into the curriculum, where students, it's not only women, it's also the boys and the girls are taught to have self-awareness, to respect community, to respect a home, respect a man, respect a woman, respect the family structure, the corporate structure. So people become responsible citizens, what you should do as a citizen. Speaking of honesty, being sincere, faithful, getting to work on time, punctuality, respecting other people's time. So they're teaching this kind of social, cognitive, non-cognitive skills, which actually will ingrained into them. What we are is what our parents taught us, what we saw as children, right? So as I think Amina said, we are 95 years away. I think very true. If we don't start with the education system, we are going to be further and further away. So maybe we should address this to our education system to bring this kind of skills. Singapore has already done it, have brought into the teenage community these skills, so that you bring out good citizens. It's not only bringing out good women into the system, you have to bring the man also into that platform, because he has to accept the woman has to accept the man. So 2 points that I want to say is the woman has to vocalize, and the corporation has to, each corporate has to give that facility by having small talk groups where women can say, I had this abuse, right? Maybe she doesn't have to say he did it, Mr. X did it, or Y did it, or Miss this lady did it. Like there was a point that was brought up, do women support other women to come up? Other women have to support, because they are going to be our champions. When a woman is a leader who actually heads a department, I have a champion where I can take my grievance to her, where I can take my ambition to her. I'll be well heard by another woman. So we have to promote other women. So basically that kind of a platform, the corporations have to develop. Regular discussions, man and woman, have to be there so that we are comfortable with each other's pains, ambitions, sadness, what we go through in families, because that reflects in our work as well. So companies can design systems to support all employees, because at the end of the day, it's not what job we want to do, whether we want to be a doctor, engineer, accountant, or HR, or whatever. Are we happy at our work? But that's going to reflect in our quality of work that we produce on the table.
Thanks, Gauri. I think we can discuss on this little more on the panel discussion. Darshi, you wanted to share your initial thoughts on the topic? Darshini?
Yes, Chamila, yes, I would do so. My connection may not be very good because it's raining on this side. So yeah, so I just wanted to very briefly touch base. Now, I think like all of the speakers spoke about why we need women in business, and then Amina spoke about how a study has shown them that there are better financial metrics in Sri Lankan companies where you have women on board, right? So obviously having women in leadership positions is good for business. And so therefore we come to the question, why we don't see more women in leadership positions, right? So I think in this conversation, as Suranga also, I think, rightly pointed out, we really need to bring the men also into it. There has to be a conversation with the men as well, because if you look at, again, of all the again, the speakers pointed out what are the gender roles play a role, and there are family responsibilities that women have to look at. So all these things affect how far women can go in their professional life, right? So so one of the main people that can help a woman to actually participate in this would be her husband and her immediate family. So you really need to kind of, I think, really bring them also into the question. And if we have more women in leadership roles in companies and in politics, perhaps they can champion the change that is needed within the corporate culture and within political government sectors, everything that will actually encourage more men also to participate in what we call household activities, so that it will encourage men to come to the fore in their professional life. So that's just a brief thought.
Thank you, Darshi. We'll discuss about this more later. Guyani, let me come back to you with this question. You know, equality is something that, you know, which is desirable to all of us. We all want to be at an equal state. But there could be instances where, you know, one could, you know, feel some special treatment because you are a woman. So do you think in reality, though we spoke about the equality, do you think in reality, when it comes to leading, gender neutrality is in place? Are we ready for that?
Yes, what your question is quite tough, and also I think practically what we need to do is a bit different. You know, what the reality is quite different. So it's quite topical that you asked that question. My internet is very, very weak because it's raining heavily here. So hopefully you all can hear me. So I personally feel that's my personal opinion. Just because you're a woman, I know the situation and the ecosystem is not conducive for women to be treated equally. That is true. But it is up to you to go that extra mile. I mean, you should not. Personally, for me, I try my best and I tell my teams and anyone whom I mentor, please don't ask for any favors. Purely try to show your results and try to gain that acceptance. Having said that, we know that Sri Lanka is also moving in that direction where mandatory quota system in board level, again, not a mandatory, it's just a voluntary thing. But I again feel once you are in a board position, just because it was a quota, you always feel that you are there not because you are good at, because you feel guilty about it. So I feel you need to, because others also will look at you in a different way. So personally for me, yes, however much difficult it is, however hard it is, we have to swim against the tide. We have to, really work hard to get our voices heard. I really like Facebook CEO. What she says is, if you're not given a seat at the table, bring a folding chair and sit at the table. You need to go that extra mile. Sheryl Sandberg says this. You need to go that extra mile, no matter how hard it is. So personally for me, I don't believe you should ask for any favors. But as women, we have a role to play in supporting such women who are going through difficulties. So I personally, in my roles in my previous company, I have gone the extra mile to support that women, so that the men will not see that she is getting extra, support. So that once she get to a certain level, then she can, compete with the others in that same level. So I think that as women, we must support, because maybe we are strong. Not everybody is strong like that. So you have a role to play to support. So you need to be a woman who can support another woman, and then you will give that strength and courage for that woman to, go and do that and conquer the world without asking for any favors. So that's my personal view. Yeah.
Thanks, Guyani. I think this is more or less related to having the self-awareness. Then you know where you're strong at, and then where you need actually to ask for support, and let your ego and ask for the support where it is required. So let me move on to Dilrukshi. Dilrukshi, you spoke about unconventional roles, which is known to be men's job most of the time. You spoke about different reasons as to why women does not get into these so-called men's job or unconventional roles. But isn't it an unconscious bias that does not allowing women to get into these roles and taking on these responsibilities? How do you think that we could overcome these biasness or perceptions that people have on the certain job categories and responsibilities that women could take on?
So definitely, Chamila, yes, unconscious bias is a key factor that could hold women back. This is not just about gender, race, or age, but also things like communication style. See, like, when you are earmarked for leadership, so you very often they conform, you have to conform to what is the perception of maybe the leadership. So you have to probably act as a man. So you are sometimes, merit is not recognized. More opportunities are given to the traits, women who have male traits. So this is due to unconscious bias. And also, you can also be biased against your own gender. It is not only men all the time. And a woman's unconscious beliefs can even cause her to hold herself back. For instance, a woman may assume she needs to take on more masculine characteristics to succeed in a leadership role. So, even I think one speaker mentioned, we have very often heard even mothers and fathers tell their daughters, remember, you are a girl and you cannot do those things. So what do? They actually limit the options of women. They say, at very young age itself, that you even create certain biases in within even siblings. That certain things cannot be done by the girls and not by boys. Look at our education system. like, where the girls are taught home science, while the boys are taught woodwork. So there's like, there are biases coming even from our education system. And so I think these are some of the reasons for this, why women are not participated more in unconventional roles. And we need to break the gender gap. Actually, about 5 years ago, I started 5-6 years ago. Actually, I started. We have a automobile training school where it was painful to even recruit girls for female mechanics. It was very painful. I went from school to school, invited girls, gave an incentive, and trained them in our training school. I was able to recruit about 15 girls in my first batch, and about 2 dropped out, and others graduated. And now they are actually not only in our organization, but right around. They are employed in unconventional jobs. Some, of course, they took over different jobs, but many of them are employed as mechanics, auto service advisors, auto parts counter sales people. And I don't think they have ever imagined being in those that kind of employment, if not for someone taking some initiative and helping them. And today they are very, very independent, and that is what is important for a woman. They cannot exercise their rights as women if they are not economically independent. And whether it is unconventional or conventional jobs are the jobs that more often labeled as unskilled. So you see, a lot of them, the society has been nice to give opportunity. The organizations try to give opportunity, but you see most of these women in the lower, the lower level of the pyramid. So very less in the decision-making positions and unconventional roles. And how can we change this is through providing education and competence, and also providing mentorship and coaching, and by networking is very important, I believe.
Thanks, Dirushi. I think sometimes perception doesn't tell you the truth. You need to swim the tide and understand where the changes are required and where you need to bring the changes into. Let me move on to Suranga. Suranga, this question is for you. There is stereotypical preferences for having masculine qualities in leadership. If I put it into more simple words, tough men lead better than sensitive or soft women. Unfortunately, when a woman becomes tough, she is not a leader. Then she becomes a tough character, a bossy character, an insensitive human. So how do you suggest women could deal with this dilemma?
Brilliant question, Chamila. I think you should read the book that I quoted in my presentation by Julia Gillard. It covers this subject. I think half of the book is about this question. It's a very serious question as well. Personally, to me, I think we've converted. We converted a long time back. We were groomed into a society and a business world to believe what you just said, that men have certain qualities and women struggle in some of these areas because they're not assertive enough and commanding enough, and not meaningful manner strong enough. So I guess there is tons of examples in that book which clears that doubt. But personally, for me, I think this is the most ridiculous thing that we've heard, in corporates, and it's going around even now. I don't think there is masculine qualities and feminine qualities that comes into performance. It's good performance, great performance, and how do you judge that performance, and how do you enable, how do you support that leadership and team to achieve those performances. So I think it's very, very unfair that like Jacinda Ardern says, that they're judged for the slightest not even a hiccup, when they sometimes they have to admit that I can't sort this out myself, I need some help. That's seen as a weakness. But when the man does it, it's seen as delegation and empowerment and all sorts of things. And this is true, it is happening. So I don't agree with it. I think it is a matter for the current leaders, that's in our hands, to create and create a fair structure, and to have a very fair evaluation system, which is gender bias and other sort of biases free. So this very grave prescriptive and descriptive stereotyping has to change. And I think corporates, if they're now realizing that having more females in the board is bringing in economic benefits, that itself is a good enough incentive. But we go beyond that. We believe that the population structure has to represent or reflect in who's leading us. And if we are to really truly make it effective, and I think Guyani hit the nail on the head about how females have to step up and perform, and not just wait until that quota is given. I think I'm definitely with you, Guyani, and I think it's already done, because if you look at the education statistics, people who come out of business schools, universities, all that's a huge disproportionately female in that regard. But then all of a sudden you put them in the corporate structure, they're not strong enough, powerful enough, and assertive enough, and they're kind of cornered. So I guess it's the corporate bosses who have to answer as to why we don't have enough diversity, as to why our structures and systems are judging people differently across the two genders. So to me, Chamila, to give you a short answer, it's ridiculous to assume that there are masculine qualities and feminine qualities. I've seen people behaving many different ways in a single gender. I was talking to my team in the morning, and I was saying I don't know what to share from our company's perspective, because gender, religion, gender, for example, it doesn't even come to our mind whether it's a female person leading that team or whether it's someone else, because gender is out of our system. For the last so many years, we kind of removed it out of the system. Anyone can really do anything, and they've proven it. And they've, it's a team that's leading us. It's a team. It's not even, I don't want to even boast that we have female representation in the board and senior executive. These are numbers. They don't mean anything, because you can put females in there, but if you don't give them the authority, the responsibility, and also you have to, make them make mistakes as well, because that's, at English Tea Shop, that's what we've done. I've made tons of mistakes. I think the most serious mistakes in the business have been done by myself. And if I'm not allowing my colleagues and my juniors to do it, and then they're not going to progress. So our females are encouraged to take risks and to make mistakes, and they're not judged. And sometimes we push them to be dynamic. And it takes only a little bit of coaching at the beginning, and you let that female go, they go the distance. So leave masculinity, femininity out of it. It's just the opportunity and the fairness in the system. Thanks.
Thanks, Ranga. I think it's more or less, situational, whether, what qualities comes around would vary with the situation and then the question in hand, more than a gender. Gauri, let me move on to you next with this question. Most of the time we've spoken about women empowerment, taking leadership, supporting each other. But if you actually looked into, in comparison to the men, there is an observable distance amongst the women. I think Suranga touched on this in his speech as well. In your view, is this a reality that there is a distance between women, or is it a perception? How do you suggest that if there is something for us to improve in our interaction, in our way we support each other, how do you suggest that we do that?
I would say you can't generalize it, that all women distance themselves from successful women. I think there might be one incident or the other. I've been victimized on that. But that is something that I should learn to handle it, right? This can happen with a man or a woman. So we need to know how to handle criticism, distancing, no support situations. So we should be able to, like very rightly what Suranga said is, to deliver. We should be able to deliver to show we are there. We have achieved. We have shown results. Our key performance indicators are met, right? And we should not listen to this noise, because when you start listening to noise, listening to negative feedback, then it becomes very destructive, not only for a woman, for a man as well. So there might be one-off incidents where women don't support women, but they don't realize it. If I support another woman and if she becomes a leader, she's my champion to take my issues, my dreams, my ambitions, and my successes. So women must make it a habit to support other women. Suranga was also saying, we were talking about like how a woman is very assertive. She's a man, if she's very successful and if she's very assertive, she's considered having male attributes. Well, I think as women, we also must learn to admire our subtlety, admire our, what should I say, being compassionate, being very understanding, being kind, being honest. I mean, these are far greater attributes than being very assertive and to be able to talk loudly and to be able to achieve. I mean, we should be able to understand these are more important qualities: sincerity, loyalty, to be, to be able to be depended upon. So we should learn to be proud of those qualities. And I mean, something that we have to internalize it. All women, we have to learn to be proud to be a woman. If a woman can learn to be proud to be a woman, she can be a man too, because we have those qualities. We have those qualities and we bring it out subtly. Like the New Zealand Prime Minister, what did she say? That a lot of people told her that she was not aggressive enough. But eventually what happened? Through her subtlety, through her diplomacy, she was able to bring out sensitive issues, able to handle a very difficult situation where the whole world struggled. So being proud about ourselves is very important. What we internalize, what we feel here, leave the cultural biases, what our mothers said, what our grandmothers said, what our in-laws say, or our husbands say, or what our bosses say. I mean, we should be able to block all those noises. And we, in our mind, must know what is right and wrong. What is the clear path to success, right? Sometimes women put a lot of importance to acceptance, admiration, and they want a fan base. No, we don't need a fan base. We only need the results. Go down there to the result. If we can work towards the results, everything else comes into place. So believing in ourselves is very important. We have to internalize it.
Thanks, Gauri. I think women doesn't need a game of golf and a glass of scotch to help each other. There are many ways that we can do it, right?
And you don't need cheerleaders.
Let me move on to Darshi. Darshi, I think Gauri spoke about these gender norms. When you are a son, you go and play. When you are a daughter, you come and help me. Or don't shout because you are a girl. Don't climb the tree because you are a girl. So there are many gender norms that we observe from in the society, and one's thought on the gender equality sometimes get molded with these norms that they see in the childhood. So as a mother, do you think women can play a major role in shaping up these gender norms from the childhood itself to give them a better understanding and appreciating each other?
Well, as a mother, I believe that a woman can influence the way a child views gender equality. But I would think it would be very helpful if everybody else in the same household are on the same page. So, for example, if a husband and wife have different views, that might not really work out, in the best way. But definitely, I think you do have a say in, the environment that child grows in definitely has an influence. But also you have to look at external environment as well, because the child is exposed to school, their friends, the media. Nowadays you have social media, and also, as I think Gauri also spoke about, TV, advertisements, things like that. So all those things ultimately are going to impact on how a child views gender equality. So if you look at some of the gender norms, so let's, for example, the norm of domestic behavior of men and women, right? So it's widely expected that women will take care of children, cook and clean, while men look after the finance and be the provider as such. And then when it comes to occupations as well, as I think speakers before also have spoken about, so you may think as a woman, you may be in more nurturing or caring roles. So you can see, like if you look at teachers and nurses, there are a lot of women in those jobs, not that women are not in other jobs. I'm just taking that these professions have like a overwhelming number of women in those, in that. And then if you look at a man, like, you know, you can see being a pilot or an engineer kind of thing, that may be something that you would associate with a boy, right? So I think the environment at home, where you don't specify like a girl has to do this or a boy has to do this, but but encourage a girl to kind of achieve what she wants to, even if she wants to go to an unconventional job, that you support that. Or like, even if a son, like if a son says, Ammi, I want to be a nurse, you should be broad-minded enough to be able to accept that. So we have to look at it in both ways and sensitize both, I think, girls and boys to the things, to gender equality. So, I mean, when you look at, but you have to look at other aspects as well, because I think when you look at schools, when you look at media, though the messages that go out to them also kind of become important now. I think when you look at schools, if you look at school curriculums and activities, they should be geared at promoting gender equality. So from the small age itself, that children are brought up in an environment that looks at gender equality, right? And as I think Gauri also pointed out, you look at teledramas, they portray all these stereotype roles. And even if you look at advertisements, they are very stereotyped. They're really, of course, now I have seen that some of the baby care products, they are bringing in the fathers more and more. But other than that, they basically cater to the roles that, the stereotype roles that society conforms to. So definitely, I think a mother can actually influence the way a child actually views gender equality, but all these other factors also does influence how the child ultimately views it.
Yeah, what you're suggesting is a combined responsibility from a family to school to the society comes together to shape up childhood thinking. I think the time is running out, so I might not be able to go for my second round of questions, but I'll just take one question for the panel to answer, as you may prefer. Most of the time, when women has their self-understanding, self-awareness, and she takes certain decisions, she's been perceived as a person who's a risk avoider, or she's risk averse. But in my view, it is that she's taking a calculated risk. So do you believe that this is a characteristic that we actually want in the boardroom? And how do we ensure that we bring this aspect to the boardroom? Open to the panel for your views.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, Gauri.
So basically, being risk averse is a trait anybody could have. Maybe why do you have to tag the woman with risk averseness? I mean, when she takes a decision, she's definitely done a SWOT. She's definitely looked at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats, and she has taken a very well-informed decision. So what we have to ask the question is, has she taken an informed decision? Not is she being risk averse? If she says, no, we cannot go ahead with this project, we have it is the responsibility of the board to make sure that why has she come to the decision? So that's why it's very important that we move in cohesion, right? For a woman, so should have the support of the people around her, and they should move in cohesion, interrelatedness, a bonding has to be there. So that teamwork, I think Suranga very, very fairly said his organization has a teamwork. So that is very important because it's just physics, interrelatedness. It's like a molecule when it comes together. There's kinetic energy within each of us. When we come together, we create thermal energy. We create different kind of energy, which actually creates velocity. It creates momentum. It creates movement. So it's always what the leader, the person who's managing the board, has to make sure that everybody works together. The interrelatedness has to be there to support. If a female is giving a decision, why she is doing that has to be questioned, then passing judgment. We live in a society where there's full of judgment. Even we judge people, don't we? Right? So it's very important. We have to take that responsibility too for a greater extent and realize people are going to judge you in an unfairly manner. Sometimes they might judge you fairly too. So we need to be well heard. We have to voice our opinion, voice it. We have to say, okay, I came to this decision. These are the reasons. These are the threats. These are the opportunities that are coming forward. Therefore, I took this decision. So there is a greater amount of responsibility with us too, to make sure that whatever decision we take is heard in the correct direction. So the board accepts it. So vocalizing our views, our decisions is very important. The responsibility is ours as well.
Thank you, Gauri. Any other views? If not, we can conclude the discussions.
I just want to say I agree 200%. I don't think we can do any justice by adding anything else to what Gauri said. She just, hammered it out of the park. It's 100% true. And the one thing I would say, I did this the whole of today, I think, recommend another book, one that was already there. I think Peacemaker's Code, read that. And Gauri, where you stopped, how you become vociferous, how you become vocal is amply covered when a leader makes decisions, and especially, in this instance, a female leader. And it's amazing to see, regardless of the fact that you're doing the right thing, you're judged by many people within your own party, within, opposition, and, by the population at large. But then how this fictional character takes care in communicating and being vocal and being heard, so that these judgments are, not reached instantaneously, and she's given a fair chance. And I just want to add that point to the amazing, response you gave. Peacemaker's Code.
It's a universal fight. I mean, it's with us. The responsibility is on us. We have to be quite happy with the decision we take first. And then when we are happy with it, be comfortable to voice it. That's important. And if somebody doesn't understand, this person is being very judgmental, we can take that first step to go sit with him and talk. Because when you talk one-to-one discussion or a group discussion, you find everybody's empathy. People start understanding your views, your mental direction. They understand that momentum builds it. So it's very important that we do that.
And I can very easily relate to Gauri what you're saying. I mean, as I just newly got into the board in my former company, I mean, sometimes I was not sure whether the decisions I took, the risk that I have taken, is the right decision. So I used to go to seniors in the board, and then I just asked, okay, this is why I took this decision, and this is the rationale behind that. And then you get input sometimes. Yes, not all the time you would have been viewed positively and you were right. But I think that feedback is also very important, especially when you are starting a new role, because you don't know everything. I mean, there are different perspectives for any decision. So I think if you're open to that kind of feedback and you start taking into yourself and try to improve upon that, will help you to make more correct decisions in the future as well. Yeah.
Little on that, sometimes I think I know where Chamila is coming, because there are times things becomes a little ugly when the female doesn't know how to handle a situation also, because it can cause a lot of pain when someone is judgmental. Then the hurt directs you to become, you know, emotional, and then you have you thrash out, and in that process, like, you know, you do a lot of unconventional things, and you might regret it after a couple of hours. But at that point, you know, you are reacting, your emotion is being challenged. So that's the time you must know you have to handle it diplomatically. You have to handle it sensitively. You know, it's not about me, it's not about him or her. It's about the job to be done. So if you can have that maturity, it's very hard, but you learn it, you know, while you travel the journey, you learn it.
Thank you. I think I wouldn't have asked a better panel than this. I would wish if I had some more time to run through this interesting conversation with all of you. Thank you so much for your valuable insights and sharing your valuable thoughts and knowledge with the audience. I'm actually privileged to be moderating this session. So in concluding, I think it's a time for us to leave aside the gender differences and work together, learning, sharing, respecting each other's competencies, capabilities, and insights and abilities to make this better world a better world for the future generations. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Kani, over to you to take on the proceeding.
And our panelists for the day, Ms. Dashni Bhatterwala and Ms. Gauri Shankar, and all the respected speakers for all the knowledge and experience imparted on us at this invaluable juncture. I now cordially invite Ms. Kumari Vijayawardena, Chairperson, CMA Women Leadership Committee, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kani. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm privileged to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the CMA Women Leadership Committee at this memorable occasion. First and foremost, let me thank our chief guest, Ms. Amina Arif, the country manager of IFC, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Ms. Amina, despite your busy schedule, you have found time to grace this event and enlighten our ladies with your valuable views. You highlighted the women's role as a mother as well as a business leader. Motherly role is the most respected role of a lady. We all understand that. Thank you very much, Ms. Amina. Many thanks again for being with us today. Then our special thanks go to our keynote speaker, Ms. Guyani Alves, Global Chairperson, Vilat, and the immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Ms. Guyani, you took the ladies to the highest level of the job structure. You gave your contribution by telling challenges faced by, especially during the work from home period, world famous success stories during the COVID pandemic. Your ideas gave our ladies a great strength to think of their potential. Many thanks for those valuable ideas. Then our next presenter, Ms. Dilrukshi Kulguru-Sylvia, Chief Human Resources Officer, Diesel and Motor Engineering Private Limited. Ms. Dilrukshi, many challenges with home commitments. Yes, it is always there with a lady. Also about diverse skills that ladies can bring to the board. Many thanks. Your presence made this event a great success. Please accept our heartiest thanks for gracing this occasion. Then our very special thanks goes to Mr. Suranga Hera, CEO English Tea Shop UK, for bringing with us at this special occasion. Mr. Suranga, I'm sure our ladies will take your thoughts in their career development in time to come. Also, especially when team working. Many thanks for being with us at this. And now let me thank our moderator, Ms. Chamila Kure. Ms. Chamila, you are the General Manager Operations, WNS Global Services Private Limited. We are really appreciate your tireless effort. I think from the beginning itself, you did a big role to make this event a success. Many thanks to you, Ms. Chamila. Then, then comes our panelist, Mrs. Dashi Vatavela and Ms. Gauri Sankar, eminent consultants. I think our ladies will take your views very seriously, especially Ms. Darchi, you told about the constraint that a lady has as a motherly role. We all experience that in our end, and how difficult we have to give a break even. It is not possible. It is not possible to measure in financial terms the role a mother has. That is a big impediment for a lady to go ahead. I think everyone understands that situation. Even myself have that commitment towards, rather than the job, the priority has to be given to the family, especially for young children. Thank you very much for your ideas. And Ms. Gauri, thank you very much for your valuable ideas. Actually, our ladies will have those, it will be cawing our minds in time to come. Now let me convey our sincere thanks to Professor Vatavela, who always guiding the team throughout the process and in all matters in the institute, and the Vice President and the Council members for devoting their valuable time to take part at this event. I also like to convey our special thanks for all the webinar participants for joining this event. Dear participants, your presence is an honor for us to conduct similar programs in future, as well as it encourages us to go ahead like this. And last but not least, my sincere gratitude goes to the CU and the staff of CMA for organizing this event. Let me conclude with the saying of Miss New Mexico Jennifer Adams. This is true for every day, even though it is quoted for 2021. In the 21st century, the role of a woman will continue to flourish. We will continue our journey as universal messengers of courage, love, and hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a great honor meeting all these men and great men and women and listening to their views. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks all for your participation. We are very grateful. CMA are very happy that we've been able to bring the ladies in front. I'm sure we get your support always. And of course, with Suranga there, I'm sure all the ladies will be in good company. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Lovely
you.
meeting all of
Thank you
you.
for your collaboration.
Thank you, Kumari. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay,
Thank you,
Kani.
everyone.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Prof.
you.
Thanks, everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Professor.
bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye. We will end now. Okay.